Hello, I'm moving on to Unit 5, Lesson 8, and we're going to start talking about multiplication more in detail here, getting it a little bit straightforward, hopefully clear up any misunderstandings that we've been having. I did skip Lesson 8, so don't go or Lesson 7, excuse me, so don't go searching for that one. I'm going to start out with this mental math. I think mental math is such a tool that allows us to reason through math instead of relying solely on calculators and things like that. So I'm going to kind of work through these problems here to get up to this really difficult one, because I don't know about you, but mentally 20 times 5.84 sounds really intimidating. So I worked my way through. 20 times 5, I think about money. I counted by 20s, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. For the next one, I thought about 20, and I thought of it as a fraction, 8 tenths. I want 8 tenths of 20, so I don't even want the whole thing. I said in my head, I know 20 times 8, if I counted 20 by 8, or counted 8 20s, I'd get 160. But I'm like, well, 8 tenths of 20 is not 160. If I don't even want the whole thing, that means there's a decimal missing. And so it's really going to be 16 out of 20 would be 8 tenths of 20. The next one, I want 4 hundredths of 20. And so I knew 20 times 4 gave me 80. But I thought, well, 80 doesn't make sense. There's a decimal missing here again, too. So I want 4 hundredths. That's a really small amount. If I broke 20 into 100 pieces and I only want 4 of them, that's going to be a decimal version. So it's going to be 0.8. So for this last one, it makes it easy because I already did 20 times 5. I already did 20 times 8 tenths. I already did 20 times 4 100ths. That would mean my answer would be 116.8. I'm going to move on, and I just want to demonstrate some multiplication for you where we ignore the decimal. And so I'm going to do this one. I'm going to get some work up. And 4.6 times 0.9, it's difficult to just try to think of it with all those decimals. But if I look at it without them, you can see over to the right here, I did 46 times 9. I did not think of it as 4.6. I did not think of it as 0.9. I just kept them as whole numbers. 9 times 6 is 54, so I write the 4 and carry the 50 to the tens column. 9 times 4, or really 40, is 36, 360, plus the 5 that's there, so I get that 41, because 36 plus 5 would get me to 41. 414, again, does not make sense as a number. If I use my mental math skills, 4.6, so I'm going to think of that as like 5. And 9 is close to 1. So 5 times 1 is 5. So where would a decimal go to make sense for that? 4.14. Another way you can see that is there are 2 decimal places in the original problem, and I worked my way back in 2 decimal places. I'm going to get my work up for this next one. Again, ignoring decimals, I'm going to do 165 times 7, and then I'll determine where my decimal needs to go. Okay, so I have 165 times 7, 7 times 5, I have 35, carry my 3. 7 times 6 is 42, plus 3 more is 45, so I put my 5 and carry the 4. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 more would be 11. 1,155 does not make sense for 16.5 times 0.7. So if I think mentally about this, if I call it 16 times 1, or I want 7 tenths of 16, an answer that would make sense would be an answer a little bit less than 16. And so putting my decimal at 11.55 makes sense. I can see I have 2 decimal places in the original problem. And again, I worked my way 2 places back into the number to find my decimal. I'll send you some practice problems with this. Check your answers with calculators after you try doing them by hand first. I want you to kind of practice this skill before you rely on a calculator.